It's obvious. And then he sings, it's obvious. And I love his voice because it's so sort of geeky.
Yeah.
It's obvious. It's obvious. It's obvious. It's obvious. So obvious. So obvious.
Hello, fellow audiophiles out there. Welcome back to another episode. Andy, John, music. And John, you are up to bat, sir. You're going to be the one offering us things from the altar. What do you have in store for us?
Got a band called Au Pairs.
Okay. I've heard of that band, and that is the extent of my knowledge. I don't know if it's like maybe because they were I want to say like new wave or post punk or something like that, and maybe because they have a sound similar to some of the revivalist shit that happened in the early 2000s. Maybe that's why I've heard of them before or something like that. But they are a British band, right?
Yeah, I referenced them in the Pylon reaction.
There we go. That's probably another place where I've heard them before too. Then not probably,
Yeah.
definitely.
And we're into Pixies territory where there is no definitive article, but it very often is added anyway. So you can
Okay.
say the Au Pairs, and you won't be laughed at to your face. So
Good. That's a huge relief.
this is a track called "It's Obvious," and I have selected a live performance, so you get a feel of the band as well. So yeah, go off and enjoy and absorb, and then come back and ring yourself out and tell us what you think.
Okay, I will. I'll do just that.
Wir sind gleich und doch verschieden. Die Au Pairs aus Birmingham.
And that bass drum. I love the way this started off with it. Obviously, the drums got me, but there was also this really interesting interplay between the two guitars, both of which are doing this like kind of quirky, jangly kind of stuff on the guitar, which instantly grabbed my attention. Then you hear this fat bass come barreling in the room, throwing elbows. Yeah, this is good stuff. Interesting. I really like the dynamic in the band thus far. It looks like we've got like this multi-gender setup here with this female lead vocalist. I think what I saw earlier was a female bass player in the background. I'm not all that sure yet, but she sounds great. The music sounds great. I'm really liking the rhythm section thus far. Let's see where we go. Ooh, nice drum roll going on there. Yeah, I didn't catch much of the verse as far as lyrics go, but what I did catch there, this sort of repeated frame of like you're equal but different, you're equal but different. Uh, I suppose it could be about a lot of things. Now, maybe I'm just falling into stereotype here because we have as I mentioned earlier, this female fronted band, and I'm immediately thinking it's either about sex or sexuality. And I mean like sex as in gender or sexuality as in your proclivities when it comes to your sexuality, your preferences, and whether or not those people, whether it's a woman or someone who is gay, is seen as truly equal. By society standards, right? So if that's what they're tackling, that's an interesting subject matter. I think we've seen some of that before in previous songs, whether here or on Into the Music. And unfortunately, it's an evergreen topic for some people. It's definitely worth shedding light on. And it looks like perhaps if my assumption is correct, that's what we have here. But yeah, the music itself, this tempo is so engaging. And the guitars are doing just enough to keep it kind of fun and pleasant with like these little quirky like melodies that they're tinkering around with. So yeah, I like it thus far. Great energy too for a live performance. Yeah. So I like what they're doing here. They're like allowing the music to breathe a little bit. They're not just going verse, chorus, verse, chorus, verse, chorus, or verse, pre-chorus, chorus, verse, pre-chorus. So they're like letting the song kind of breathe and playing with the dynamics of the song right now. And it sounds like we've just got the rhythm section at this point. It sounds like the guitar's cut out there for a bit, which sounds to me like they're going to perhaps do some more musical tinkering here, which I think the song needs, and it keeps it from being too cut and paste and too repetitive. It adds a little bit of shift to the song, which I think it needs. So yeah, let's see where they go from here. I'm liking their musical decision making thus far. Really love the little things the guitars are doing on top of just being enamored with this drum. Just the tempo of the drums and the energy that he's bringing behind that kit is really, really engaging for me. Like that, what the guitar does there. Bing! That great. Yeah. Okay. It sounds like I'm going to take this back. Sounds like she's delivering what I thought was the pre-chorus, but he is like beneath that doing the equal but different, like that sort of the chorus, right? The lyrics on the chorus. So it's interesting how they're like sort of melding those two portions together from a vocal standpoint. Yeah, and I guess that before that was like the third verse, sans guitars, so it was again just like very rhythm based. Very cool. I enjoyed that. All right, how's this? Let's see where we are. That bass. Wonderful performance. Yeah, really, really loved the energy. Be hard pressed to stand still with that backbeat going on. So I really enjoyed all of their stage presence. I mean, the bass player was just chilling back there, but for the most part, everybody was really into that. It was fun to see the crowd's reaction. There was that one woman who was shown a couple times, I think, the one with like the sort of the shaved head and the piercings. She looked absolutely engaged. Like this song really spoke to her, which again only furthers my confidence in my assumption about perhaps what this is about. Again, I could be wrong, but it was a really fun and engaging performance. I know I've used that term a couple times, but when it's something, and that's what it was. Yeah, I really love the sound. I know I've harped on how much I enjoyed the drums and kind of that fat bass sound, but those guitars, man, they're doing some really cool, like, and I don't want this to be taken as like a pejorative, but like ancillary stuff, like the little things. But when you do a bunch of the little things the right way, it actually makes the song better, and it actually helps the guitars kind of stand out, even though they weren't out here doing, like Eddie Van Halen type shit. You know what I mean? You don't have to do that. And we've said that ad nauseum on this channel as well. Excellent sort of post-punk ditty here. And I really loved a lot of what was going on. John is going to have to confirm or correct me on my assumptions about the subject matter. And he's also going to have to tell me a little bit more about this band. And the only way to do that is to get back to them. So let's head over.
Well, now we are gathered here once again.
We are. We are.
So you listened to the Au Pairs. What did you think?
I actually really enjoyed this. It was not only the song that I found interesting, but I really liked. I'm glad that you gave me a live performance because, and this is all still based on assumption, like what the song is about or what they're addressing or what this thing is that's so obvious. But there were some interesting lyrics. Mostly the ones that I caught were like pre-chorus, chorus, because there's a lot of like repetition, like a refrain that's being offered up several times. So you get this interesting gender dynamic that you have in the band, right? Where I think it's like 2 women and 2 men in the band.
Yes.
So
which would have been unusual at the time.
Right. Probably not. But it was still interesting nonetheless because of the inference I got from the lyrical content, which I'll get into a little bit as I go over this, because it kind of helped, I don't know, further my assumption about the subject matter. But yeah, the band's treated to this like really nice German introduction, and things kick off with this like very energetic, these drums, man. I loved the drums throughout this whole goddamn song. They were probably the best of several interesting moving parts that I enjoyed in this tune, but the drums definitely made this super engaging and energetic, and just the tempo and everything was wonderful. So that starts off. Then we get a quirky bit of guitar playing, and then shortly after that quirky guitar, we get a second quirky guitar playing, and then in walks in this fat bass throwing its elbows in to be seen and heard, and it all was very nicely kind of assembled there in pretty short order at the start of things. And at this point, I'm already enjoying the energy of the song and the band's live performance. Your vocalist almost has this like female Bizarro World Robert Smith hair going on, with just like all the black hair there kind of coming down her face a little bit too, which kind of just made me chuckle because I just thought, oh, that time. And the rhythm and the tempo of the song is really what gives this like the drive and the energy that I'm finding so engaging. The chorus introduces this repeated refrain that I mentioned earlier. You're equal but different. Now, you're equal but different is very kind of, and I'm American here, so I'm coming at it from an American perspective, but this reeks of the summation of the 1896 Supreme Court ruling of Plessy versus Ferguson, which is separate.
Oh, that thing.
Yeah, that whole chestnut, which is separate but equal, which basically codified into local and state governments the ability for those who are, for those to basically enforce segregation, to allow segregation, basically state sponsored. So they tried to, it was almost like the 90s version of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, where it's like, I don't know if you ever remember that euphemism being thrown around in the news, but it was almost akin to that, but way worse. And not that was any great shining moment in American history.
I didn't realize that actually was like, put into statute.
Oh, yeah. 1896, basically, it was a very conservative, very white Supreme Court. And they said, hey, you're humans, but and you're equal, but you got to be equal over there doing your own thing, and making it your own way. So it codified that into law. Now, Brown versus Board of Education and other stuff that would come 50, 60 years later kind of knocked that down. But yeah, this is like some early Jim Crow law shit that was happening over here in the United States. So when I hear you're equal but different, I think separate but equal. I don't know why. It's just I'm the American history guy, the law guy in me thinks that. So, but in this case, for me, I think it's less about race, which is what I'm reminded of. And it's more about either two things that are kind of connected, which are sex, i.e. gender, or sexuality, your proclivity to love another person. And so I'm wondering which, if not both, could be like what exactly is she talking about here? Because like, look, not for nothing, I don't want to paint with a broad brush or judge book by a cover, but I saw some of the audience members. In fact, there's one that is panned to a couple of times throughout this show. And if you were to tell me that woman didn't enjoy the company of men, I would not be surprised. So I thought maybe, and I don't know anything about this woman who's singing, but maybe she's a lesbian, and maybe she wants to love freely, or maybe she's just wants to be treated equally because she's a woman. I don't know which dynamic it is or if it's both, but that's where my head and my heart are going with this when I'm like watching all this and listening to all this. There's nothing groundbreaking about this bit, but I love how after, and they do it a little bit after the first chorus, but they do it longer after the second chorus. They sort of let this music and groove like breathe a little bit, and they kind of tinker with it and stuff. And the song needs that, or else it's just this like cut and paste of parts all stapled together. And that's vanilla. And we've seen there's millions of songs out there that are built like that. And, it doesn't necessarily make a song not enjoyable for me, but this does make music more enjoyable for me when they add these little bits and play with things and dynamics and all that stuff. And they really like jam out a little bit rather than just predictably jumping to the next verse. And then at the 3:44 mark, the main guitar motifs cut out, allowing for the rhythm section to shine. And save for these very judiciously placed, well-timed, chimey in nature, like harmonic guitar chords that the guy on the Stratocaster, or a guitar that is meant to look a lot like a Stratocaster, is playing. The lead guitarist, I would assume, is his role. I don't know. There wasn't really a lead in the song to speak of, but we are treated to a few of those before the guitar's accent work shifts to this faint but frictious strumming that's going on. And I really loved that. This gets higher in pitch as the portion progresses, which adds further sound dynamics to the song. And then the third verse begins while continuing this less is more approach to the guitar, where it's essentially I think the third verse sans guitar essentially is what we're getting. With maybe a little bit of accent work peppered in here and there, but certainly not like it was performing in the first and second verse. And as the song moves to the pre-chorus, we get some really cool vocal layering where like the lead singer and the male guitarist are working together. And she is singing what I'll call paradise portion. I call it that because that's the one word I definitively caught. And it definitely precedes that repeated refrain main proper chorus portion, which he's delivering. So you got this like pre-chorus vocals layered over top of chorus vocals by those two different singers, and it's really cool and interesting. I really liked how they kind of how that serendipitously cobbled together so well. And so yeah, I thought that was really cool and interesting. And then they ride the final chorus out through repetition until the song and the performance come to an end. And I only caught bits and pieces of the lyrics, so you're going to have to confirm or correct my earlier assumptions about the possible subject matter. But I can say that with more certainty that I really did enjoy the show, like the performance and the song itself. Again, it was rich with great energy. I really, really enjoyed the drums, obviously, but I can't understate how important all the little things the guitars did, how important that was to the song as a whole. Like in the moment, you might not think they're doing much, and they're not really, but when you add all these little pieces together, it creates for quite a tapestry that are the guitars in this song by the song's end. So yeah, I really, really liked the song as a whole, the performance, and I really loved what the drums did the whole time and what the guitars did as a whole by the end of the song. And like for a live performance, I thought she had incredible stage presence. I thought he supported her really well in that, and that the drummer, you can't not come across as energetic when that is your tempo and that's the drum beat that you're playing. Bass player is going to bass player from time to time. You're just going to kind of sit back there and be the wallflower and chug away. So, I can't really nail her to the cross, but she could have been a little bit more energetic. But aside from that, I thought it was a really good performance, and a really, really good song. I'd say we're in the B plus territory, maybe A minus territory, when you take everything into account, like their live performance and the whole setting and everything. So, yeah, enjoyed it.
Cool, cool. Yeah, just to say about this song, I picked this live performance because it's really cool to see them for a start, and you get more of a sense of them. Um, I have to say I prefer this to the studio version, which is really clean and they do bits and pieces with it. But this just feels like they're really putting everything into it.
Is it
And
really
it
that
flows.
divergent in like sound or music or anything like that? I mean,
You
obviously you're
get
gonna get the cleaned up thing that you're talking about when you're done with a polished product, but it's not like the jam that they went on in the last 2/3 of the song in between before the third verse started. It's not like that was extended or played with
a
in a way
little
that it
bit.
wasn't.
I mean, in
Okay.
the studio one, you have saxophone screams in there.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
yeah,
Why didn't they
which
tour
is
with
not.
a multi instrumentalist or anything?
I don't know. It,
Eh,
it wasn't unusual in post-punk to get weird shit like that.
yeah,
And like you said about the layered singing, that's another common sort of thing that you will get in a lot of the post-punky stuff like that. It's cool. Yeah, so really interesting band, pretty important band as well, and so forward thinking and everything. A bit like they're often compared to Gang of Four, and at Gang of Four you can just listen and enjoy their stuff, and it has that wonderful funky groove and all the other bits to it. And then when you dig into it, there's so much more about them and their outlook and what they're doing, which for some people will slowly drip in by osmosis, and other people will just latch onto it. So Au Pairs formed in Birmingham, 1978, and they went through to 1983, and they are described, unsurprisingly, as post-punk. So personnel: Leslie Woods, guitar and vocals; Paul Fode, guitar, backing vocals; Jay Monroe, bass; Peter Hammond, drums. I will say off the album this is from, the bass is really front and center on a lot of songs, but it's kind of an early Kim Deal sort of thing where it's simple but
yeah.
it's effective. It's that
That's
type
a
of
simple
bass.
but effective is exactly how I would
Yeah,
describe this bass line for sure.
yeah.
For sure.
Rather than sort of flea or whatever, it's
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
just
yeah.
yeah. So, little sideline here, but it's just interesting because I love a couple of these quotes here. So, Birmingham, when it was where they were kicking around. So, from Stuart Lee, who I've talked about with you off camera, British comedian, man of culture, all round national treasure. His documentary King Rocker showcases the scene in Birmingham at that time, with Birmingham's first ever punk band, the Prefects, who later became the Nightingales, more on that later, plays venues like the legendary Barbarellas, a venue which they immortalized in song of the same name as a place where, in quotes, where the beer tastes of prune juice and they sell tickets for the exits. um, the Au Pairs actually toured around there and played with them, and they formed from Birmingham's Rock Against Racism Action Group, where they met, the three of them, and they team up with local bands and play gigs for the anti-racist organisation. Foth says that as well as the personal politics of relationships, the Thatcher years gave us plenty of material to comment on, remembering hundreds of wild gigs where National Front skinheads would turn up to disrupt the shows. So you're getting a feel of where they're coming from and how they're going. So they put out their debut album, Playing with a Different Sex, which is considered a post-punk classic. The cover was shot by photojournalist Eve Arnold and features two young women in Inner Mongolia training for the militia, and they're running through a field in pink dresses and white scarves, and they've got their rifles. It's a very arresting image.
Yeah.
A lot of the songs on this album deal with sexual politics and gender relationships. Just as flavor of them, just to give you that, they do a song called Repetition, which is actually a David Bowie cover from the Lodger album. It's a great Bowie album track, really is interesting. Here they do it in a spiky, almost dub way. And it's really interesting. And it's about domestic violence. Dear John, one of the songs tackles male sexual fantasies. And in the opener, We're So Cool, which is some very interesting guitar work. It talks about the possessiveness underlying an open relationship. Lines like, your body I'm prepared to share at off-peak times. Um, so allegations of government-sanctioned rape and torture of Irish women imprisoned in Northern Ireland were highlighted in the song Armagh. The song led to limited distribution of the album in Ireland when Northern Irish record distributors refused to carry it. They had a spot on the television program, The Old Grey Whistle Test, which we've referred to before, and against advice, they decided to play it live because no one could stop them. Singing the refrain, we don't torture, we're a civilized nation. They were never asked back.
Yeah.
And told they would never appear on the BBC again. The song Come Again refers to social pressure to achieve orgasmic equality. And a 1982 profile in a magazine called Mother Jones, which I believe is quite famous in America, notes that the song depicts sex as a dreary ritual in which partners are as joyless as lab rats, press bars and nose buttons in the hope of an orgasm as dry and as quantifiable as kibble. The song was banned from the BBC, who feared parental backlash. So Leslie Wood's, the singer's anger and good straits of her time and the freedom she found in punk and the ambiguity of where it all might end up all came together in the album's closing song, It's Obvious. The band's unofficial anthem, which both envisions and asserts a future in which gender roles just don't matter so much, and both sexes have access to equal time, equal resources, and equal leisure. You're equal, but you're different. Some of the games, it's obvious. Yeah, you got to remember, sort of back then as well. I would say a fraction of women actually worked, and a large majority of them were expected to keep the home, keep the kids, blah blah blah, and the blokes go out and work and get pissed and all that sort of stuff. So it's a very different to what we have now. The sexual nature of Wood's lyrics on the album shocked people 40 years ago. Woods was one of the very first female singers to be open about her sexuality. She says there wasn't much space in society, at least at that time, for independent, progressive single women whose sexualities were fluid. So yeah, it's got a bit of attention that way. The album itself reached 33 in the charts, the mainstream charts, which is quite amazing, and #1 in the indie charts, as you'd expect. And it's been praised and whatever. But there's a nice quote here from AllMusic that says, "This is an uncompromising, defiant record. Gender roles are turned upside down, as are theories about sex and sexuality, and hetero and homosexual relationships are put under a microscope. An unflinching look at the world playing with a different sex is one of the great and perhaps forgotten post-punk records." So we're going to the lyrics. They're not particularly complicated. Actually, a little bit mundane, some of them, but it's quite interesting how it all works. So she sings,
compared to some of the stuff you were quoting from other songs on the album, they I didn't catch any of those that were like, ooh. But I could still understand the subject matter for at least.
But it's almost like domestic bliss. Spending time nowadays it's nice. It's paradise. Equal time, equal spending. Yes, it's nice. It's paradise. Nowadays, you cook eggs, equal breakfast, and again in bed, it's nice. You're equal but different. You're equal but different. 8 times. You're equal, different. It's obvious. And then he sings, "It's obvious." And I love his voice because it's so sort of geeky.
Yeah.
It's obvious. It's obvious. It's obvious. It's obvious. So obvious. So obvious. Spending time nowadays by my side, that's oh so nice. And again with you, it's equal nice. It's paradise. Nowadays, you wash sheets in the bath, scrub my back for me. That's paradise. You're equal but different 8 times. It's obvious. It's obvious 4 times. So obvious. And then we have that guitar jam break, as you say, which then breaks it down to the bass and the drums. And then I put underneath twitterings. Yeah. And then we build back up again. Spending time nowadays by my side, that's oh so nice. And again with you, it's equal nice, it's paradise. Nowadays, and this is where you say the layering comes in. So she's singing, nowadays you wash sheets in the bath, and going, you're equal, you're different, you're different, you're equal.
Yeah, I was gonna say, doesn't he invert the equal
Yeah,
and different? And yeah,
he does it. Yeah, that's paradise. You're equal, you're different, you're different, you're equal, and then you're equal but different, and then it's you're equal but different 8 times, and then it's obvious 6 times, so obvious another 3 times. It's ... So back to the band. Their second album, Sense and Sensuality, 1982, showed a greater influence of jazz, soul, funk, disco, even, which again wasn't uncommon in that progression of post-punk bands, but it was less well received. I like it. It's just not as hard-hitting or as impactful as this album, which is a really true masterpiece. The band was scheduled to record a third album with producer Steve Lillywhite, who we've mentioned many times before, in 1983, but they broke up. Drummer Pete Hammond said, by that time, we'd exploded into pieces. We were exhausted, he says. In the final year, we played over 200 gigs, and our management didn't notice how stretched we were. We fell apart because of the intensity of our journey was immense. We did hundreds of gigs to support our beliefs and barely sustained our existence. It took its toll. So they were doing all the right things at the time, but didn't look after themselves. Woods has also intimated that the hostility and violence that she and other women faced playing music was a factor in the group's demise. She said, there comes a point where you can't go on anymore at that level. Interestingly, she was both idolized and pillared by people because she was seen as a feminist, but she was wearing makeup and dressing sort of attractively. And they would say, how dare you go up and sing that stuff while dressing like a slut, and all that sort of usual bullshit. Anyway, she then later formed an all-woman band called the Darlings in the late 80s, but it didn't work out, and she completely left the music industry. Now, as Leslie Longhurst Woods, she works as a barrister in London. Guitarist Paul Ford is still a full-time jazz musician and also teaches. He's still based in London. Bass player Jane Monroe is now retired, but she worked for many years as an alternative therapist doing aromatherapy, reflexology, and Indian head massage. And Pete Hammond also remains an active musician in Birmingham. The three of them, however, have a long-running dispute with Woods over the rights to the songs and their royalties. Woods has said that she wants to get back the rights to the feminist songs I wrote, arguing she was a lyricist and the songs originate in her experiences. These songs that came out of me, they're part of me. Fode, Hammond, and Monroe claimed they co-wrote the songs as a quartet, and that the decision was made by the band when they formed to share credits and royalties. In the joint statement, they said one of the founding principles of the Audiophiles was equality. This extends to members of the band. Each one of us was uniquely important. We are saddened by Leslie's desire to take our rights away from us. We're all equally committed politically, still are, and always will be. So I guess they're equal but different.
Yeah. I couldn't help but think of
it's funny, isn't it?
The hypocrisy in her argument about the songs. Like, I was with her up until that part.
Yeah, I mean, I think of equal but different. I think of George Orwell and Animal Farm. That's what comes into my head. You know,
there you go. No, you're right. I mean, it makes sense, but that was actually written about real life things that were happening, which is what I'm talking about. So they're all kind of
exactly. No, it's interesting that you go to that, and I didn't know about that. So that was really interesting to hear.
Which why would you?
Yeah.
So it's not your nightmare; it's mine.
Fair enough. So that's the Audiophiles. Really interesting band. Great first album. But yeah, I will wrap things up.
Cool. Well, thanks for offering this, John. It was a great performance, great song, man.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Hopefully, folks out there will, some of them will know it. Hopefully, many of them will appreciate it. If you do, please hit the like button and drop us some comments about the Audiophiles, this album in particular, and the second album if you want, this song, other songs. We're So Cool is a really good song, but there's plenty on that album. We'd love to hear from you. And if you haven't already subscribed, please do. And, meet your daily quota by dropping into the Audiophiles and seeing what delights there unfold. That being said, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see all of you on the next episode of the Audiophiles.
See you later, guys.